Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews on How To, and today we're going to take a look at the ACEPC T11 Micro PC. I bought one, so you don't have to. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at the ACEPC T11 Pro. Now this is a relatively old mini PC now, and it comes in this really tiny form factor and looks very much like an Android TV box. And to be honest with you, it's a similar power. It's not the fastest of machines. In fact, it's an absolute dog, and spoiler alert, I would recommend that you do not purchase one. But we'll go into the reasons of that a little bit later on in the video, but what I thought I'd do is go through the specifications, the ports, the I/O, the packaging, the actual use case scenarios, and then my thoughts and also my disappointments. So stick around to the end just to make sure you don't miss anything. So first of all, let's take a quick look at the packaging, and the packaging itself actually does look pretty decent. T11 Mini PC, portable design. It's got the Intel Inside logo in there. This is actually using a Intel Atom quad-core processor, which speeds of up to 1.92 gigahertz under full turbo. Although, as we found in some of our testing, you'd be very, very lucky to get those speeds. Generally, it is throttled by the actual temperature of the device. This is a fanless device, so it is very, very temperature sensitive. But anyway, it also has eMMC flash. So there is actually two types of storage in this device, one of which is eMMC flash, which is basically a soldered on memory, which is on the motherboard. This particular version has 64 gigabytes. There are other versions available which have got 32 gigabytes, and I believe there is also a 128 gigabyte version floating around as well. This is also backed up by a SATA port, which you can connect a 2.5-inch SATA style drive, so whether that's a HDD or a SSD, the choice is entirely up to you. This particular model, and one of the reasons why I purchased it, is because it came with a included 120 gigabyte SSD, which made it very tempting. As it says on the box, we've got expansion of a hard disk up to 2 terabytes. So you can, if you wanted to, use the eMMC storage for your main operating system, then put in a 2 terabyte drive and use that for all of your content and videos, photos, all those kinds of things. Even programs and games possibly. Although games, probably not a great idea, as we'll come on to a little bit later. So going back to the packaging, it actually looks like the real deal. Very plain. On the back it tells you more about the information. So this is a mini PC, T11 4GB version, and the trademark is ACEPC, and also on the back it's also got the EU representative information, so basically who it's distributed by in the EU, which may be of great use should you want to return it, which, to be honest, you probably will. Delving further into the packaging, you're greeted with a power brick, which is a very tiny unit, and actually this is extremely low power. Realistically, you're looking at about 10 watts power draw, which is basically nothing. Also included is a HDMI cable for display purposes. You can also use VGA. We'll take a look at the ports in a minute. It comes with a mini PC quick start guide, a set of mounting screws for the VESA mount, and also the VESA mount. This is actually quite an interesting design. There are actually a hook area on the PC itself, so you can just latch it on, and this attaches to a standard VESA mount on the back of the monitor. So getting to the PC itself, and as you can see, this is an extremely small form factor. Measurement wise, we're looking around about 5 inches square and about 1.5 inches high. So this is exceptionally small and can fit pretty much anywhere. The I/O is actually pretty decent. So on the front, we've got a power LED, although technically where you want the front to be on this is a little bit of a mixed bag. There are various port sizes and sides, so depending on which you want. I would suppose traditionally the front would be this area with the power button. You've also got your USB ports, so if you wanted to maybe plug a keyboard and mouse into there, then maybe you'd want the power LED on the front, so you don't have to look at the USB ports, but anyway, I digress. So we've got a nice clicky power button, 2 USB 2.0 ports on the front. On what I would class as the rear, we've got a VGA, a headphone adapter, gigabit Ethernet, HDMI 1.4, a OTG USB connector, and then you've got your power jack. Moving around onto the other side, we've got a pair of USB 3.0 ports and also a TF card reader. And then we go back to this side and we've just got our power LED and the ACEPC T11 logo. On the bottom, we've got our VESA mounting area, so there's 2 hooks there. You could, if you wanted to, just put some screws into a wall or something and hang them from there if you wanted to. 2 screws here. Remove this flap and that gives you access to your SATA port and also the 2.5-inch drive, which in some cases may be included, as it was in mine. Ventilation wise, you've got slotted grills pretty much all the way around. On the top there's no ventilation at all, so this unit does actually get quite warm just in general use and even when it's idle. I found idle temperatures around about 60 degrees C across all the cores, and the top of the unit did feel warm to the touch, measuring around about 40 degrees or so with a thermal tester. So that's the actual unit itself, its specifications and some of the temperatures we've experienced. Let's talk about the downsides. Now this is where it gets interesting. This particular unit was shipped to us from Amazon UK and came pre-configured in the box, ready to just plug in. So plugged it all in, connected everything up, started up, and it was relatively sluggish. We went through the Windows setup process and everything seemed pretty much okay, a little bit slow, a little bit laggy, but as you'd expect from a Atom quad-core processor. This is the Atom Z8350, so it's not a particularly nippy processor. Like I said before, 1.44 gigahertz is round about the normal clock of it, anything up to 1.92, and it will go down as low as 800 megahertz when it's in idle mode. So definitely not a nippy unit. With Windows 10, maybe 3-4 years ago, this would have been relatively okay, but now as Windows 10 has become slightly more bloated and is a little bit more power intensive, this unit really does start to struggle. This is most notably in things like YouTube and any kind of video playback, where I did find a considerable amount of stuttering, especially on 4K video, which they actually do put in the specifications of this being perfect for, which it isn't. Depending on the codecs that are used, if you've got a very high quality 4K signal, it is going to struggle like crazy. I did find even some 1080p footage, even at 30 frames per second, was very stuttery. Going down to 720p, rectified that entirely and it was completely fluid and very, very smooth. Some 1080p footage, which is recorded in slightly lesser codecs, will also play fine, so your mileage may vary, but just be warned, if you are looking to use this primarily as a media device with maybe 4K footage or for some kind of home projector, then I would possibly look elsewhere. So going back to the Windows settings, the first thing I wanted to do was to get a latest version of Windows on here, so straight into Windows Update, and immediately I was greeted by a very odd screen. So basically this comes out of the factory with the Windows Updates completely disabled, which I thought was a little bit of an odd decision because most people would be security conscious and want to keep those things updated as often as possible, and also to get new features and all those kinds of things. So that did make me wonder what was going on. Didn't think much of it, so I thought, right, what I'll do is, to give this a fair test, I'll completely blast it, put a fresh new copy of Windows, which is version 20.004 at present, and see how we go from there. So I loaded up my USB stick from the media creation tool, installed Windows, and was greeted by a few things which needed to be installed. So headed over to Snappy Driver Installer to get all of my drivers installed, and that is when the problem started. A couple of drivers couldn't be found, such as the Broadcomm driver for both the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth. So luckily I did have Ethernet connected, so it wasn't a deal breaker, but certainly was slightly frustrating. So head over to ACEPC to look for some technical support, drivers, all those kind of usual things. And the ACEPC site let me down drastically. Essentially, if you want individual drivers, not a chance in hell. They have got ISO images or kind of RARD files, which you can use to reinstall the completely base operating system, but that takes you back to exactly where you were, with it being completely locked and unavailable to do any updates or any feature updates. Quite frustrating. So not in a particularly good way. I spent last night approximately about 3.5, maybe 4 hours or so, just trying to work out what the heck was going on. So to cut a very, very long story and a very frustrating story very short, because of the incompatibilities with the Broadcomm chip which is embedded in these devices, the latest version of Windows 20.004 and some of the older versions do have problems with Windows updates. So if you want to get one of these and install your own fresh version of Windows, which to be honest you don't have to, it does come pre-installed with Windows 10 Professional, which is nice, but you can't update it and it is locked down. So if you do like to have your Windows operating system completely fresh and up to date as much as possible, this is definitely not the device for you. The ACEPC support forum is pretty much horrendous. No real driver updates, just ISO files for updating, like I said. And that in itself was actually quite a chore. There was no clear or clean instructions on how to actually get their files onto a USB stick to reformat the drive or to recover it to its factory settings. So overall, not very good service at all. And most certainly, if this is anything to go by from their other products that are available, I would certainly consider their support as a determining factor if you're actually going to buy a product from ACEPC. Certainly from what I can tell, their ACEPC support is very limited. There isn't much of a community there, so it's very difficult to get support. I ended up having to Google pretty much everything. So yeah, not a particularly good experience. So other experiences, trying to get apps and things at Windows Store, I found with the default installation, for some reason would not load. I tried to get Cinebench to actually install on here, and it refused to do so from the Microsoft Store. I did manage to download it, and to be honest with you, it ran like an absolute dog. CPU-Z I installed on here, and the CPU score was around about 60 points, which is absolutely horrendous when you bear in mind that something like a Ryzen 1200, a very, very old processor now, would score around about 420, maybe 430. A massive, massive jump in performance for really not a massive jump in price if you're building a PC. You do get the convenience of a small form factor, but certainly it is extremely crippled in speed. Multi-core performance, we've got around about a score of 260 something. To be honest with you, I didn't pay a great deal of attention because at this point I knew that this thing was destined for the Amazon returns pile and would never see the light of day again in this household. So there we go, there is my impressions and my experience with the ACEPC T11. Hopefully your experiences have been better. I have actually seen other reviews of this on YouTube, which is actually some of the reason why I actually went and got one. I have previously used a B-Link BT3 Pro, which I actually found to be very good, although that was a fair few years ago now, so maybe they are in a very similar situation based on a very similar chipset. But let me know in the comments, what do you think of it? Have you got a T11? Have you had problems with it? Have you managed to get around the Broadcomm driver issue? What has been your overall experience? I would be genuinely interested to know. So unfortunately, the ACEPC, even though I did manage to pick up, is an Amazon Lightning deal for around about £105 here in the UK. Certainly, I would not recommend it even at that highly reduced price. Normal retail price of this with the included 120GB SSD is about £155, at which point I would certainly run for the hills. So anyway, that wraps up this review and my experiences of the ACEPC T11. I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.